Hi everybody, this is Jason. Today's video is going to be about a 15-20 minute video introducing you to iTree Canopy and getting you through the process of creating your first iTree Canopy project. So this is really a video intended to take someone who doesn't even really know what iTree Canopy is and be able to get them to the finish line of an iTree Canopy project. So just real broadly, iTree Canopy combines Google Maps imagery with US Forest Service science to allow us to estimate the amount of canopy cover within a boundary and estimate the ecosystem services that canopy cover is providing. And those ecosystem services that we can estimate include air pollution removal, carbon storage and sequestration, and hydrology related benefits. This is a web-based tool, so you can get to it directly at that canopy.itreetools.org, or you can get to it through the iTree website, which I'll show in a minute. So how exactly does iTree Canopy work? The basics of it are that it is using that Google Earth imagery and it's taking a random sample of that. So what we have here across the top is showing 3 of those kind of random sample points. And the way this works is it doesn't do anything automatically. It doesn't know what it's seeing in the image. So it relies on you, the user, to classify each one of these points. So in the first case, in this image on the left, right in the middle of those yellow crosshairs, I would say that's a building. In the middle image, we've got the yellow crosshairs right over water. And on the third image, we're on a street here, and this is actually a street tree right out front of a building. So I would classify that as tree canopy. So that's all iTree Canopy is doing. It's pretty basic. And one last thing to point out is how many of these random points do I have to do? So this is a random sample, so the more points you do, the better. We have something we call sampling error or standard error. In this case, the more points you do, the smaller that error is going to get. If you do 500 points, your maximum error is going to be about 2.2%. And if you do 1,000 points, your maximum standard error is going to be about 1.6%. And you can see in this graph here, we kind of get diminishing returns. If we go over 1,000 points and maybe we get to 1,500 points, we only get down to about 1.3% standard error. So that's why we recommend somewhere in this 500 to 1,000 range to get you down to that 2.2 or 1.6% standard error. How accurate you need to be, completely, it's up to you how many points you want to do. 500 to 1,000 points, that'll take you something like 2 to 4 hours. And I just wanted to show a quick example of how iTree Canopy is used to maybe get you thinking about how you could use it for your own projects. This is an example from the city of Charles Sturt in South Australia, and they did a whole citywide iTree Canopy project, and that's what we have the results of up here. They were able to estimate how much tree canopy cover they had, how much plantable space they had. They felt like they could identify that from those aerial imageries, how much space they have for new trees, how much impervious surface, and how many other surfaces. But beyond that kind of citywide baseline data of how much tree canopy they also went down to the neighborhood level. So they could do a whole bunch of these projects at 36 different neighborhoods, and now they can start to think about maybe where they want to prioritize planting new trees, which neighborhoods maybe have a lot of opportunity for new trees. And that's the type of baseline information you can get from an iTree Canopy project. So keep that in mind. If you want to see this full report on the website, if you just search on our itreetools.org website, if you just search for Charles Sturt, you can get to this report and look at it more in depth. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into iTree Canopy and see how it works. To get to iTree Canopy, I'm going to show you how to get there through the website. So this is www.itreetools.org. We click on the Tools menu. We can just scroll down to Core Tools and click on iTree Canopy. And now we're on the iTree Canopy landing page. If you ever jump into this page and you've already got data loaded, you can always create a new project. So Home will always take you back to this. If we hit the project drop down under File, we can open existing projects, we can save our project, or we can do a new project. If you ever have data in here and you want to start over with a new project, you hit that new and start over. Do make sure you save it before then, otherwise you'll lose any of that old data. And another thing you can do from the file menu is you can start a change analysis. We don't have time to talk about the change analysis in this video, but we do have other videos up on the website that will get you there. We'll talk about some of these other steps as we walk through it, but you can always return to configuration, and we'll get to survey and report in a couple minutes here. And you can always open an example project. So if you just want to see what an iTree Canopy project looks like, go ahead and click on that example project. iTree here takes you back to the main iTree menu, and this little support menu here just has things like our user's license, a little bit of help, and if you need this website translated, it just uses the Google Translate feature. So now I'm ready to go ahead and get started with my project. When you do one of these projects, there's 3 configuration steps you have to walk through first. The first step is defining the boundary of the area you're interested in. It's really important to think carefully about this step because once you define these boundaries, you can't go back and change them once you start your iTree Canopy project. So make sure you take your time and get the exact boundary that you want because you won't be able to change it later. So with this, I'm just going to show you, we actually have 3 different methods for getting a boundary in here. I'm going to start with the first one, which is using preloaded boundaries that we already have in iTree Canopy. So I'm going to start near where I work in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And you can see we've got these drop downs for existing boundaries. So I'm going to go ahead and expand the US boundaries button. And with these little eye symbols here, you can turn on each of these existing boundaries. And I'll let you explore these existing boundaries on your own. But for me, I'm going to go ahead with US Census Places. US Census Places are essentially municipalities or cities. So when I click on this little eye symbol, you can see we get these purple boundaries around all the cities in the area. Cities and smaller towns. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit so that we can see all of Philadelphia. So when you're ready to select your area of interest, you just want to make sure you turn on that layer. So you have to click this little checkbox here. And if I scroll down to the bottom here, you can see my select tool is blue. So that means I'm going to go ahead and select my area of interest. So I just click on it and now I've got my boundary for the city of Philadelphia selected. Maybe I want to compare Philadelphia to nearby cities. So we've got Camden across the river. We've got the city of Chester just south of Philadelphia. Maybe I want to click that one. So if I was going to do my Canopy project using these multiple boundaries, it's just going to give me one number for all of those boundaries combined. So if you wanted to compare them, you would have to do separate projects, just like that example for the city of Charles Sturt. But maybe I just want to do Philadelphia, so then I can just click to the delete tool, and I can go ahead and delete the ones I'm not interested in. So that's how the selecting existing boundaries works. So it's pretty nice. We've got lots of census data in there, but there may be occasions where we don't have the exact boundary that you're interested in, or perhaps you're working outside the US. You may have seen that we only have US and UK boundaries in there now. So I'm going to go ahead and actually delete Philadelphia so I can show you the next option, which is this load shapefile boundary. So shapefile is a GIS data layer. You can do any boundary you want, and you can sometimes create those in GIS, or they may already exist as these GIS shapefiles. So another time you might want to do that is if you're outside the US. So I've got an example shapefile here just to show you. And shapefiles are actually composed of a handful of different files. The ones we need in iTree Canopy are these .shp and .prj files. So I'm going to go ahead and hit browse, and on my desktop here I've got a boundary for Cairo, Egypt. So I'm just going to click on that .shp file, and I've also got that .prj in the same folder, so I'm going to open that and click upload. And it's going to upload this shapefile. It'll take a second to load in the map in the background, but now we've got the boundary for the city of Cairo, Egypt, and we can go ahead and start our project there. So then I just want to go ahead and show you the last option. So maybe you don't have GIS expertise, or you're doing a rather simple area. You can actually draw your own boundary in here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete Cairo and choose to draw my boundary. I'm actually going to go back to Philadelphia to show this example of how you might draw a boundary. So in this case, I'm actually going to zoom in to a specific area within the city. And I'm going to zoom to an area around Temple University. So that's a university in the city of Philadelphia. And it's this area right in the middle here. And I've got draw boundary selected. So then I'm just going to click on the borders of this boundary. So I know one border follows this train line over here. So I'm going to go down here to Cecil B. Moore Ave, and I know that some of these buildings are in there. And you're going to click on as many points as you want to describe your boundary. So I could be much more detailed about this. I know that I may not be grabbing every single building on campus. But you want to take your time, draw your boundary, and you can zoom in and you can pan around and get as detailed as you want. You can move points, so if I didn't like that point there, I could move it wherever I wanted by grabbing it. If you want to delete a point, just click on that point, you get this little X and it'll go away. So I'm going to go ahead and just complete this boundary. Go down the train tracks. And when you get done, you click on your last point and it'll close that boundary. If you wanted to start drawing another boundary, maybe there's some buildings that belong to the campus that are a little off separated, I could circle those as well. I could draw a boundary for those. But I'm going to go ahead and stick with this boundary, and we'll go ahead and use this for the rest of the example. So those are the three ways you can create your boundaries. You can use the existing ones we have preloaded, you can load a shapefile, or you can draw your boundary. So that was configuration step 1. Configuration step 2 is deciding what classes you're going to grab on that image. So you can pretty much do any classes you can see on that image. Like we saw in that Charles Sturt example, I could add a class here called plantable space if I wanted to know how much space I have to plant new trees. I can delete classes, and I can edit any of these classes. So I could change the names or how they're described. I'll just show you how this works by adding one more class, and I'm going to call this impervious parking lots. So I know we've got some parking lots in there. I'm going to leave that description blank since we don't have it for the other categories, and my abbreviation will be IP. This is not tree cover, so I'm going to leave that as no. And then I can change this color to any color I want. I think we've already got some gray colors in there, so I'm just going to make this kind of a bit of a lighter shade of gray. And you can grab any of these colors and change them as much as you'd like. And you can change these default colors as well. So any colors you want to use, it's completely up to you. You do want to make sure that you have at least one tree cover class in there. If you don't, it's not going to estimate any ecosystem services because it doesn't know what counts as tree. You can have more than one tree cover class, and some people do that. They have tree over impervious and tree over pervious, so you might have multiple tree classes as well. If you ever create a custom class setup in here, you can save it and then you can reload it. So say you're doing a bunch of municipalities, or if I wanted to do all the universities in the city using the same exact classes, I could save those and reload them each time. So that's configuration step 2. These, you can always edit these names and edit these colors, but you can't go back and delete or add new categories. So again, this is a spot where you want to take your time. And the last configuration step, and this is one that you can actually edit at any time, is to define where your benefits are going to come from. So in my case, I'm in the US. I'm just going to hit this little drop down and scroll down. These benefits go down to the county level. So I could do the whole state of Pennsylvania if I wanted, and it's going to give me average ecosystem service rates for trees in the state of Pennsylvania. But I want to zoom in all the way to Philadelphia. So Philadelphia is its own county, so I'm just going to go ahead and check that. And you may notice that these monetary values change, especially for things like air pollution. So if you choose a dense city, more people are going to breathe that cleaner air. It's going to have a higher monetary value when we remove pollution from the air. So all that data is there. I'm working in just, it's the city of Philadelphia, so there's really not a lot of rural space, but you may be in a county that has rural areas and urban areas, and you would want to select those categories appropriately. And if you've got your own multiplier, so maybe if we go to the carbon tab here, you've got your own price for carbon that's different than the default value we provide. You can always edit these. So if I uncheck this use benefits from these locations I selected, you can change this value to anything you want. So maybe you're looking at the carbon exchange rates and they're higher than what we have in here. You could go ahead and enter that. Or maybe you're in another country that uses a different value. You can go ahead and change those as well. I'm going to go ahead and just stick with what we have for the defaults, and now I'm ready to do my project. When you're ready to do your project, we're out of our configuration. It says we're now conducting our survey, and the way you conduct your surveys is to generate those random points and classify each random point. So this is our little kind of dashboard over here. I'm going to go ahead and hit this little plus symbol at the bottom to create a new point. You can see it zooms me right into that point I created. So you can see it zoomed me right into that point I created, and in this case the point is on a impervious surface, a little plaza out front of a building there. So I'm going to say this is impervious other. So now I've classified my first point. And at this point, I'm just going to hit the plus button again to create a new point. And in this case, again, this looks like it's on the edge, but we're looking right in the middle of those crosshairs. And you can zoom in a little more, and you can see that point's on top of a building. So I'm going to mark that as impervious building. So we've got another point here that looks like it's on a plaza by a building, so this would be impervious other. And now you can see I'm hitting the save and create new, so it's recording what I just clicked on and creating a new point. And this point here, it's in the shadow, but it still looks like it's on this paved surface here. It looks like there probably is a tree there, but it doesn't go underneath our point, so this still would be impervious other. Remember, you're looking right in the middle of those crosshairs. And at this point, I'm going to pause. I'm just going to do a bunch more points so we have some results to look at. Okay, so I've done about 67 points here. You can see my last point here is on a tree, so I'm just going to leave this as tree shrub. And if you ever want to be done, you just want to hit save instead of that save and create new, so it just saves your last point. And you can see as I go along, we actually get this updated graph of our cover types. So you can see we've got our tree cover here, our herbaceous cover, this is our buildings, impervious other, roads. And you can see down here we've actually got the current estimate of how much cover we have in each category. The impervious road is 6% with that standard error of plus or minus 3%. So as this goes along, you can see how that standard error changes over time, and kind of the bigger bars are going to have a little bit higher standard errors. So that's how we go through an iTree Canopy project. One thing I want to make really clear before you ever leave one of these pages is you want to make sure you save your work. So even though I was hitting that save button, it was really just updating this table in my web browser. So if I had a browser crash or my computer crashed, it's possible I could lose all the data points I collected. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save here. And typically what I do is I name it after the place I'm working. So this would be Temple and the number of points I have so far. And I save it that way. So then each time I do more points, I can update that with the number of points I've done. And I'm just going to save it to my desktop. And if I wanted to reload this project, I would just go to Project, File, and then I could open that file I just saved. So you do want to make sure you save often. Typically, we recommend every 50 to 100 points, and you can just keep changing the name of that file. If you wanted to share that file with someone else so that they could complete the project or add more points, you can always do that as well. So that's how you do a project. So let's go ahead and look at the report. So I'm going to click on the report button. You can also get to it up in the project menu here and click on report. And this is what the iTree Canopy report looks like. We've got that graph that shows our various cover types and the amounts. We've also got a map of all those points. So these are colored by the colors that you set up during that project configuration for your different classes. If you don't want just this white background, you can change it to a satellite map, or I like kind of this light colored street map. I think you can see the points pretty well on top of that. You can scroll down and you can see we've got all our estimates of cover types, the percentages, the areas. We've got our ecosystem services all down through here with some footnotes for each one of those. If you really want to dig into how these are calculated, we've got a lot more information on the website. So you may want to save this. The easiest way that I find to save this is to go under this little report menu and you can click on print, and this is just using your web browser's print feature. So usually you'll have an option to save it as a PDF, so you can go ahead and save this image as a PDF, and then you have those numbers and you can share them or otherwise document them. So that's what a report looks like. If I wanted to go back and collect more data, just going under the project menu here, I can jump back to survey, and now I can continue collecting more points until I get to my desired standard errors. So that's iTree Canopy. That's how it works. And with that, remember, we've got lots of other videos to cover other aspects of iTree Canopy and the other tools. There's lots of documentation about the methods and lots of example reports. So do check out all that stuff on the itreetools.org website. And if you ever run into trouble, feel free to email us at info@itreetools.org to talk to one of our support folks.